are going to the next speaker. Next speaker will be Bill Venier. Bill has over 30 years of experience in human embryology, andrology, and the state-of-the-art IVF techniques. He holds a master in human reproductive biology from the Imperial College, University of London. He is certified by the American Board of Bioanalysts as an embryology lab director. He also was trained in the US, UK, and Australia with some of the most well-respected people in the field. Currently, Bill is the co-founder and trainer at World Embryology Skill and Training West. He is also the laboratory director at San Diego Fertility Center. Bill, thank you so much for joining.
Nabil, thanks so much for having me, and it's a pleasure listening to everyone before me. So my job is very easy. I'll just say thanks.
Thank you.
I'll try to touch on a few things that the others have not touched on, and maybe some differences in that I do compared to them. Oops, I'm going too fast here. So the main thing a couple of years back, like Deb alluded to, we switched from hatching on day 3 to hatching at biopsy. The main reasons for that is, the premature hatching, the ICM hatching out or hatched out. And I'll just review some unpublished data that I actually did here at our clinic, that compared to totally, intact blastocysts within the zona, compared to hatching blast, compared to fully hatched, there is a 10% difference in pregnancy rates between fully engulfed blastocysts and hatching blastocysts, and a 20% difference between blastocysts being fully in the zona or fully hatched out. So we want to keep that embryo in that zone as much as possible, is our thoughts. Cell-to-cell junctions, there's not much difference between the two. Of course, I'm feeling when we're doing the biopsy, if you start the suction between 2 cells, they seem to break easier, or the junction breaks easier with the larger cells on day 5 than they would on a day 6 embryo. So the majority of our blastocyst biopsy is on day 6 these days, and we do culture out to day 7, but day 6 is our norm. Debbie alluded to it a little bit. Between day 5 and day 6, we're taking a lower percentage of cells between the 2 days, but we're getting a larger amount of DNA. That makes sense. So smaller cells, I'm probably grabbing some more than I would on day 5 because the blastocyst has more cells to take. So I'm a little bit more aggressive, and I'm probably the most aggressive that I've seen so far. So that equals more DNA for analysis, is how I look at it. And the worst thing that happens is embryo fusion. So the embryos fuse together. This came up on Mavericks not too long ago, a week or 2 ago. So I'm going to show a video of that, along with some other videos. And here we go. All right, so the biopsy videos I'm going to show, I'll show you at day 3, that, a day 3 hatched. That usually meant a day 5 biopsy for us. Day 6 biopsy with hatching at biopsy. Fused embryos, I call it the tap-tap method. I'm going to show you some tap-tap fails, cherry pick, and cleaning house. Okay, so here's my usual. This is our old school day 3 hatching. Bigger cells. Again, this is successful, but look at the ICM, it's hatching out. I just think it's not good for the freeze thaw. We're a freeze all program. We do not do fresh transfers. So, you know, it might be a different story with fresh transfers than frozen thaw. You'll see we're a flick method program. So I'm not sure if this one will show the flick, but I'll show you in a video after. This might be real old school for us. It's definitely not a flick for us because I'm lasering a lot here, or more than usual. Like everyone says, you're trying to hit the junctions, usually not a straight line, try to pull it apart after a bit. Sometimes there's big, large cells on the edges. Sometimes it's tough to avoid lysing those big ones. Successful. So again, it's really preference. Out of everyone that told their laser ampage, I'm probably one of the smaller ones. I do 300. I know I'm the smallest in our lab. Everyone does 400 but me. But myself, I do 300. Oh, no, I don't want to play that one again. There we go. All right, this is just hatching at biopsy. I was trying to keep these videos short. So it's already, I made my hatching. I'll show you some things in the next couple of videos also. I do backload with PVP, even though I'm not a trainee. And I don't necessarily need to go all the way in the zone and to get what I need to get. But Deb puts a puff in, I do that also, but sometimes, hey, if it's right there and it wants to come out with me, that's fine. I'm not going to go in and go get it. I usually try to hit it 3, maybe 4 times, and then I'll do the flick. This one probably is a flick. But if I'm hitting it a lot, it's probably not yeah, that's a flick. Okay, that's an aggressive flick. Notice there's cells coming out of the ICSI hole right here on the bottom. I'll get to that, I think, in my next slide. Oh, it'll come down the line. All right, this is going to be 3 different slides. Oh, I got to go back one here. Riley, can you take me back one? Okay, thanks. All right, we'll start with this one. You see these are totally fused. Nothing we can do about it. But this is what I did about it. So again, I tried to keep them short. That's why they're going to be in 3 separate ones. This patient had a lot of embryos, so these were actually never transferred. It was PGT. We did send them out. They both came back euploid. But I'll show you that it shouldn't be the same cells that were tested. Because there's no way to tell what cells came from which embryo, of course, from here. So again, I hit it. It took a while. You got to do a lot of lasering on something like this. So I'm just going to go to the next one. Okay, and then just finish this one off. Eventually it's going to come apart. Takes almost your whole, well, beyond the working field, as you can see, but it takes a long distance to pull these apart when they're like that. But there we go. Okay, so then I have my two. So then what do we do as far as, so then you go into a different area and you biopsy the different areas so you're not mixing up the cells, so to speak, or you're not making it mosaic between the two. Could be mosaic on its own. Let's not help it. But you could tell this was, you know, how thick that zona was, but look at how big those blastocysts were. So again, that was a day 3 hatching. All right, this one is, it's long, but kind of the same as the other one. So I'm just going to kind of move on so we're not stuck watching one thing, but you kind of get the gist of how to take apart fused embryos. Okay, so if you notice the blue arrow over by the microscope, I'll show you actually what the tap is, what Deb alluded to. And she actually had a beautiful tap on hers that didn't move much. So I don't use a finger, I use a pen. And don't mean to prop anybody, but I use a Cryos pen because it's heavy. And I hold the tip end, and you'll see it come in. And it's ready. Did it stop? Yeah, it looks like it stopped. Sorry. There we go. All right, now pull it out there, and now watch where the blue arrow is. And then I push in a little bit, and that's it. Okay, just like a double light tap. There are the cells. So after I'm done milking, pulling it out, I kind of push against the zona before I do the tap. Okay, here's a tap, and I want to kind of show you the, here we go. Okay, so notice the cells coming out of the ICSI hole. I use that for the tension. This one, I'm going in on where I collapsed before. I don't normally do that. I usually collapse in one area, and then I go to another area to do the biopsy. But here I'm blowing in a little bit. Let me in. Okay, so again, I'm trying to use tension not only from the holding, but from where the cells are coming out of that ICSI hole. I think this might show a little aggressive tap tap also. Let's see. That did okay. All right. Let's go on to my next one here. Oh, this one shows that you can get a little aggressive with the tap tap here. Oops. Kind of delayed a little bit, so fortunately, there we go. So here I'm opening it up away from where I did the collapsing. You can see my PVP coming out. So I usually want it coming out a little bit slower than that, so I slow it down before I go in. Heading in. Okay. Again, 3 or 4 hits. Looks like a 4. I don't really want the biopsy pipette really leaving my field of view when I'm looking under the microscope. So can be a little aggressive. And I think David showed that before. I kind of push it back in if it is hanging out at all. I'll show you a big fail for the tap tap. You need suction. So you want to make sure your holding pipette is really holding on to your embryo. I always crank it when I'm right before I'm ready to do the tap, just to make sure I got enough on it. And here, I didn't make sure there was enough holding on it. So you'll see. You can see we're not all perfect. Well, everyone before me may have been, but. So again, nice big blastocysts on day 6, lots of cells. Be aggressive. Hannah, I see your question there about PVP. We try to minimize the amount of PVP that does go in there. If I slowed it down before my previous video, so it shouldn't go in that much. You can always suck it back out as much as possible. Would be ideal. There, so see, it just released from the holding pipette. So not that it's a complete fail, but you know, it's a little too aggressive, so I gotta kind of make things right and go back to it. I don't think I showed the same thing, but there you go. So it's not a complete fail, but you know, you don't want that to happen. You just want to make sure you have good holding on there. Okay, the next slide. So this is a cherry pick. I am not a big proponent of cherry picks. Kind of learned this from an embryologist I had in my lab for a couple of years, Julie Collier, from the East Coast. She went back east, so we do miss her. But she taught us the cherry pick, and it's just taking those cells that are coming out of the ICSI hole. So I'm not going to do probably a true cherry pick here. I'm going to probably try to take some more cells with it. One, you want to make sure these cells are attached to the blastocyst and they're not just being extruded out without being part of it. So you'll see here, the cherry pick doesn't always fill your pipette, so that's another thing, but you can see it hanging on. So there is a connection there. So again, I try to put some pressure back in there and try to get some more cells off the blast coming out. That's what I'm doing here. All right, and you're trying not to lose your cherry pick at the same time. Make sure I have a good enough amount there. I went from a smaller to a larger biopsy pipette. So yeah, there goes my cherry pick. So what I would normally do is go back and get that other part that's hanging out. I didn't want to keep the video too long though, but that would be a cherry pick. But as I was saying, I went from a smaller biopsy pipette to a larger one. It's not super big, but it's about 28 micrometers, the inner diameter. And I do like that better, especially for the day 6 biopsies. And it does, for a late 3AA or something along those lines, I do like the bigger pipette for those bigger cells. So I do 3s if needed, just depends on where they're at 3 and definitely 4s in the Gardner grading system. This is just cleaning house. This is just a lard extruded cell that's not doing anything. I like to get these out before freezing. The reason for that is at thaw, you know, hey, what degenerated? Is it the cell that was extruded out, or is it cells actually from the blastocyst? We do have one physician that does come in and wants to pick things his own way. So I have to deal with that. So I would, especially if this is a patient of his, I want to clean as much out as possible before I freeze. So I'm just taking the cell out after the biopsy. And then this gets moved well away from where the biopsy occurred in a different part of the droplet, and I make sure I do get it up when I do go and get the embryo. So that's cleaning house. All right, now some ICSI videos. I do load multiple sperm. It looks like by some other videos, I did see other people showing that as well. I use the SAW technique, and I'll show you that. So these are just isolated. This was actually from a Tessie case. So these are not the best looking sperm, but just shows me loading them. I like a narrow, sharp ICSI pipette. that doesn't taper for a long distance. So that's it. If I have 4 embryos in a drop for ICSI, I'm going to load 4 sperm. If I have 5, I load 5. And that's it. But you want to have control. It takes practice. It's not for beginners. So as Kristen said before, it's practice, practice, practice to get control of these before doing real cases. Saw technique, probably the ordinary technique, but I was trying to get crafty with everyone else on this panel, so I wanted to keep up. So essentially, I'm just going to go straight in. I'm going to use suction back. Make my V. Okay, if it's not breaking easily, I go back. I add more suction before I go in. Again, and there's broken right there. So again, I don't want it to shoot back in far, but I want to make sure it's broken. So sometimes it's, you know, it goes right away once you go in there. Sometimes it takes 2 back and forth. Sometimes it takes more. Just depends. But that's essentially what I do. I believe it was Tony that showed you go into different areas. That's great too. That works awesome. I was just kind of showing you my differences there. And then I go on to the next one, but I'll skip this, I think. All right, what do we do if a failed ICSI at ICSI? This is not a no FERT after ICSI. This is sometimes your sperm gets stuck on the tip of your ICSI pipette and it gets dragged back out. So some people, including myself, I used to go back in with another sperm. They usually tend to become atretic. So more often than not, you're causing damage to the egg. This is not a beautiful egg. This is a immature egg that's been in culture for 7 days. However, I do subzonal sperm insertion if the ICSI failed. So I'm not giving up on this egg, especially if it's a good egg. And I take 2 motile sperm and I put them underneath between the zona and the egg itself in the parabitulin space. So, and I always put 2 in. I don't put 1, I don't put 3, I put 2, and I do not get polyspermy, or but I should miss word there. I don't get 3 PNs. So again, not a beautiful looking sperm, but it's there. This one does kick up after a while, but that's what I do if the sperm comes out after ICSI. What am I showing here? Oh, so this is a special case. This kind of, this may be something similar to Sheila's case, but this was years ago. And this was the patient's 2nd cycle. We knew there was something wrong with the zonas. They did not protect the egg at cleaning whatsoever. So we actually dissected the eggs out of the zona on these, and we did ICSI with no zonas, and it did lead to a successful pregnancy and live birth. So got to be gentle, but it's possible to do. Again, don't give up. There's different ways of doing things, and may not be the perfect scenario, but it can work. Nice and gentle, it broke. Just amazing how some of this stuff works, but it's amazed me for over 30 years and still happens every day. So I believe that's it for me. Let me make sure. Yep. Thanks, Nabil, Progenesis, the other panelists, and especially the audience for hanging in there. I learned something new every day, and I've learned some stuff today from everyone else. So I really appreciate it. And Nabil, you're doing a great thing by keeping this thing going. So thanks again for having me.